Welcome back to Build Stomp Projects. In today's video, we're going to be finishing up the rear swing arm setup. Be building the tubes for the struts to mount to, or shocks, whatever you want to call them. And then we'll be setting it down on the ground, putting it on some new tires. So as long as you have a level floor or a level surface to work off of, you can put a piece of tubing on the ground, and then you can put the notches lined up at the bottom and the top, and then you can use a little level to make sure that they're even in the valley, so in that way when you're trying to make some pieces that are exactly the same, if your notch was off a little bit, you can adjust it. So once you get that done, what we're going to be using these ones for is they're going to be running from the bottom support, and then they'll be running up to this front up in here. They'll be pretty straight on here, and then we'll have another one or two possibly that are going to run from the top. Kind of they're going to all notch together up here in the front, and then they're going to triangulate back, and then they'll probably have little pieces holding it on, and then the shock will mount off of that.
So we found a new way to work out. Turns out our rear axle is relatively beefy.
Axle curls, bro. So we got the lower portion of the swing arm done. Well, the first arm, there's going to be more, but we got to move on and start getting the spring mounts kind of made, so then we can know where the upper tube can go. We're hoping to be able to get roughly 6 inches of travel up, and then probably another 2 or 3, maybe 4 down. It just kind of depends on where we get the spring to mount. Alright, so here's just another little fun size comparison from what we had on the back to what we're going to. A large difference. Got both sides built on these extra tubes for the rear suspension. They've got some funky looking notches in the front, but we'll pull the whole rear swing arm loose on both sides, pull it all off. I'll slide the bushings out so I don't melt them when I weld it. I'll weld this tube up and then get this tube welded in on both sides, and we can start getting shocks mounted.
waiting for these new supports to cool down. Got the rear bar put in to keep the rear axle from flexing too much. We're also getting rear bushings greased and put back in so that we can finally start getting the rear suspension built and put on.
So the suspension's finally suspension. I got the shocks kind of mounted on here where I'm going to want them. I kind of went a little overkill buying these shocks. So currently we're going to have about 13 inches of travel total, and there's still a lot of shock left over. So I'll show the reason why we can't go up any higher is because of the chain. It'll run into the oil pan and such. And then on the down, we can't go any lower because the chain already is hitting on this piece of frame rail, so I'm going to end up notching this out so then the chain will clear for the downstroke. So we're going to put limiter straps on as well as bump stops to keep the axle where we want it, but we're waiting for those to show up. So we're going to be using these universal rubber bump stops to control the axle movement upward. We're going to end up redoing these rear tubes here, and then we're going to just extend them straight down, build a little bracket off the side for the bump stop to contact the axle.
Without those bump stops, then our breakers become our bump stops, which is not the kind of braking we want them to be doing.
So this is a little disappointing, slightly embarrassing. I didn't see this before, but once I put the springs back on, it doesn't fit into the mount because the spring hits down below. So I can force it in, but the spring definitely hits where it should not be hitting. So gonna have to come up with a solution for that. I just got this rear spring mounted. What I did is I just notched that frame back a little bit, took the outer panel, ground the excess off of it, moved it in, welded it on. So now we've got enough clearance there to where the spring's not going to hit, and so both shocks are now mounted. So today's a super exciting day for us because we got our rear tires in finally, so we're going to be able to see what this thing looks like sitting on the ground with the springs on it. Here's a little size comparison to the old rear axle setup and just how much better the new rear axle setup's going to be. It's a lot wider, as you can see. The tires are better, and just overall build quality is better. The first one was pretty subpar, to say the say the best about it. But this thing's gonna be awesome. We're gonna set it on the ground now and see how it looks. Pretty exciting to see it sitting on its own 4 wheels again. Ride height's pretty good. Good thing the springs are fully adjustable so we can set it wherever we want. Yeah, see how soft the suspension is now, see what we get. I think it's going to work. I think it's going to be way better.